Welcome everyone, Costin here with a discussion about Kislev in Total War Warhammer 3 and the issues they have and what could be improved with them as a race, as a faction, if you will. It's weird calling them a race when they're just regular humans, like the Empire and other factions. But yeah, Kislev does have significant problems right now in the campaign. From their unit roster, to their economy, to their devotion, to the supporter system over here. Plenty of significant issues, regardless of the legendary lord that you're playing. They also have one of the harshest areas in the entire game to play in. Probably the worst area in the entire game to play in. Because Kislev just isn't really that good. Why is that? Well, if we look at Kislev, they're the three big cities. Kislev, Erengrad, and of course Prague, which I have under my control over here. Don't ask why it's only tier 3. Certain issues did happen with regards to the clan here. Specifically, Clan Mulder came down and wiped them out. And then Morger showed up as well. What a load of fun. So anyway, with regards Kislev, they do have the 3 cities. And those cities are good in terms of their income, their trade tariffs, their market income. Okay, that is pretty decent. However, the minor settlements, the oblasts, eastern, troll country, western, southern, they're not that great. They only have minor settlements, which means that their income is going to be very limited, or they're going to be very limited in general. And the buildings, the markets themselves, only generate a very small amount of income. 100 at tier 1, 150 at tier 2, 200 at tier 3. If they were generating 300 at tier 3 and we didn't have tier 4 and 5, that would actually be a much better situation. But they do generate a very low amount of income. So money is going to be a significant problem when you are playing as Kislev. And I do think that this situation with the provinces is pretty bad, because these minor settlements just have limitations, significant limitations, when it comes to Kislev's potential growth. I feel like, and I've said this before, I feel like Kislev could really benefit from having these minor settlements associated with the big cities. So for instance, Kislev would have the Southern Oblast, Helpit would have a Troll Country, Erengrad would have the Western Oblast, and so on. Now, people will argue that you would get less Attermans, but Attermans, although good, they're not an enormous... they don't change things in an enormous way, really, when you're thinking of playing as Kislev. They do help with your income, they do help with your growth, they do help with construction costs, but they're not going to be able to make up for the weak economy that Kislev does have. Now, Kislev doesn't really have too big control issues or growth issues. In fact, they have some really good growth buildings, and with some supporters, you can, as Boris Ursus at least, or with an invocation, you can get pretty much close to the same growth level as the greenskins, which is substantial. But you're not really going to gain the same amount that the greenskins are going to get from their settlements. Consider the income greenskins get from their minor settlements, let alone their major settlements, and yeah, it is a night in the difference. And although you can trade, your trade income is never going to be quite substantial. This is turn 53, my trade income is only 3,600. Now granted, I don't necessarily have a huge amount of trade resources, though I do have some, like over here for instance. I do have Animal Market in Helpit as an example. I do have gemstones over here in Krakadrak and some other things as well. But yeah, your trade income is just not going to be substantial enough. In point of fact, the only thing that keeps you going economically as Kislev, and yes, I am generating 7,000 right here, and I could afford 1 or 2 more armies, but the only thing that keeps you going as Kislev from an economic perspective is the fact that you've got a lot of foes to deal with. You're surrounded by enemies, and fighting those foes, fighting the legendary lords in particular, like Azazel over here, will generate you a significant amount of cash, but not a significant amount of income. per turn. So you won't really be able to afford a lot of armies. I mean, it's barely at this point that I can start getting armored Cossars in pretty decent numbers, and I have free armies. I could afford 4, maybe even 5, but there are going to be some problems with regards to that. So economy is weak, and I do feel like their minor settlement economic buildings could really use some buffs. Now here, you can get some decent economy from the farms, but again, fairly limited. The growth is great, but not necessarily the economy itself. I feel like their major cities could really use more than just these trade buildings, caravans, and all that. Though, yeah, the tradable resource would help me out when it comes to trade income. But the biggest problem when it comes to their economy is Kislev doesn't scale very well. And that is significant in a game like Immortal Empires, where how well you scale economically is very important to your success on the campaign map. Now, to be clear, I am playing one of the or the best Legendary Lord of Kislev, because you start with a fairly substantial force as Boris. You do start with 2 Warbear units. I got the Regiment of Renown. He gets an upkeep benefit. He starts with 2 units of Tsar Guard. He starts in a good position. He can avoid many of the same problems that Catherine and Kostaltin do have, and he's substantially better in a combat situation than either of them are. But yeah, I'm playing the strongest Legendary Lord of Kislev, and although no foe so far has given me any real challenge in a battle, with the exception of Grimgor over here, who's about to wipe out my entire army here. He's got too many troops, too many high-level troops for me to tackle, but I knew picking that fight was going to create some risk. I probably should try running away there, actually. So yeah, scalability is a significant issue. Scalability of economy, which means how many armies can you have running around. And it's only really at this stage, with quite a few trade partners and quite a few settlements, that I am capable of setting myself in a position where I can maintain more than 3 armies. 3 decent armies. Not great armies either. Beyond that, there is the issue of the Kislev units. While armored Cossars are pretty decent, they also can be a significant drain on your already weak economy, which, as you might imagine, can create quite a few problems. Your regular Cossars are just not that good. They cost a decent amount of money, 450 for regular Cossars, 500 for Cossars with spears. They're not good melee units. That's significant because you can only really rely on them until you start getting the armored Cossars going. You can only really rely on them. The problem is the vast majority of battles are either minor settlement battles or siege battles. You can make them work in minor settlements, but not having good melee units or any melee unit outside of the armored Cossars for quite a long time is going to create a lot of issues for you when it comes to taking settlements. You might win every single field battle, but taking minor settlements with a full ranged army of range units that aren't really that great to begin with is going to be a problem. Now, here's the thing with Cossars. They do cost quite a bit. They're not cost effective at all. They're decent, but they're not cost effective. And the problem is, you look at their stats, they have really weak armor. 15 armor. That is very, very weak, and you don't really have any way to improve it, I believe. If I look at the research tree, there aren't really any benefits. Yes, you can get some melee defense, some other things, but you don't really have any upgrade to improve their armor. Maybe there's some building in one of the unique cities, though getting those unique cities can be its own issue. But yeah, you don't have any real way until much later on to really improve these guys in a significant fashion. The only major upgrade you get is Pirate's Weapons for range, armor piercing, and reload time reduction. But even so, they're going to be lagging significantly behind. They do have weak armor, relatively weak leadership. They're weaker in melee or on the same level in melee as regular Norscan Marauders, and Ranged-wise, you can buff them up, especially with the Lord skill tree, but it's certainly not going to be a substantial amount of power. A counterexample I can give is the Goblin Archers, who do have better armor, who do have substantial upgrades from the tech tree, and who are very cost-effective compared to the Kislev Cossars. They're cheaper to recruit, cheaper to maintain, and because greenskins have a very powerful economy, for every stack of Cossars you might be able to afford as Kislev, the greenskins will be able to afford 2, 3, or more stacks of Goblin Archers. And that's just baseline units. Let's not even talk about the good greenskin units like Nasty Skulkers, Black Orcs, all that kind of stuff. You just won't be able to get those units in large quantities for a very long time, even if you do end up having a fairly massive empire. You do have good heroes with the Patriarchs and the Frost Maidens, true, though the Frost Maidens are incredibly limited because you don't have structures to increase their capacity for a very long time. You do have some research, but don't expect to see a lot of these Frost Maidens running around. Though the Patriarchs are pretty good, and the replenishment, one of the few things that Kislev really does have going for it is extraordinarily good replenishment through the Patriarchs. And it's pretty easy to get the Patriarchs, but yeah, their army roster, I'd say it's pretty good if you start talking about the mid and the late game when you're thinking about Armored Cossars, Warbearers, Tsarguard. But the hybrid units just aren't that great. Yeah, Armored Cossars will hold their own in melee in a fairly solid fashion. And they're not too expensive to recruit, but you do need tier 2 settlements, and you do need to get a barracks for them. And the problem with that, as you might imagine, is you have a lot of minor settlements, and you're going to want to get things like churches in those minor settlements to be able to recruit Patriarchs, or you're going to want to ensure you have growth and control and an economy. As weak as it is, you're going to have to focus on the economy in the minor settlements. So you are going to be limited in how many barracks you can have and how many units you can recruit, how many good units you can recruit, or decent units you can recruit. So yeah, it all ties together to the weak economy, and research options can be a bit weird as well. Kislev certainly was a race designed for the base game, which was a more limited campaign, but even there, they did have substantial issues. Then let's talk about the supporters, because one of the unique mechanics of Kislev is being able to invoke the gods, the 4 gods of Kislev, and gain some benefits in battle and on the campaign map. Okay, the problem is supporters do scale, the amount of supporters required does scale dependent on how many settlements, how many provinces you hold. And so for instance here, for me to be able to invoke any of the gods would require 237 to get those benefits. And generally you're going to want to go with Urson so you can get more supporters to get the benefits from the supporter race. Why do the supporters matter, you might ask? Well, the leadership benefit is actually one of the big reasons. Control, yeah, it can help. If you're playing as Boris, you may want to throw supporters to the Ice Court to get even more growth, or supporters to the Orthodoxy to get control. Because you don't have the same control benefit as, say, Catherine, and you don't get the permanent benefit that either Catherine or Castalton get through the supporter race. But the supporter race is a genuine annoyance to have to deal with. A lot of people have told me to just ignore it, to which I reply, okay, I can ignore it, lose the control, lose the leadership, lose the speed, okay, because yeah, you don't gain anything for winning the supporter race or having a lot of supporters thrown around, except if you're playing Boris, you get the temporary buff, but you're not gaining significant amounts of money. For instance, when it came to Hector versus Paris, you could gain quite a bit by caring about the support race. In fact, you had to. You couldn't just ignore it. You could gain some substantial benefits. Heroes, or rather lords in that game. Heroes, money, various things, various benefits available to you as the player. Here, you're just getting, you're getting a permanent buff in terms of control, leadership, and speed if you're playing as either Catherine or Castalton. You're getting a temporary buff if you're playing as Boris. And the support race can be a significant drain on your devotion, because you're pretty much always going to want to have one of the gods active, generally Urson, in order to get the supporters to be able to win the race, so to speak. It's less of an issue if you're playing as Boris. Hell, many of the issues that Kislev deals with are less of a problem, except the economy, if you are playing as Boris, because he does have some fairly substantial buffs and he does start in a good position. But yeah, the supporter race wasn't really that great in the base game. It certainly isn't that great in Immortal Empires. I think that requiring the player to spend more devotion dependent on the number of settlements just isn't that great of a mechanic, because when we think about the rights of, say, Dark Elves or High Elves, those don't scale based on how much territory you have. The invocations do scale. I'm not sure why they decide to go down that path, but yeah, there are some fairly substantial problems that come with it. Reduce the cost, and Kislev will be in a better spot, improve their economy, make Hussars cheaper. Honestly, make Hussars, regular Hussars, cheaper. Armored Hussars are fine cost-wise, but make regular Hussars cheaper. Because, quite bluntly, they're no better than regular archers for the Empire. That's the thing, they're on the same range level as the Imperial archers, but those archers are more cost effective. Another issue with the Hussars is they don't have good armor piercing. With an upgrade, yes, they can get some fairly good missile strength with upgrades, with Lord skills. They can get some decent missile strength, but again, they're on that same level, except they're more expensive to recruit, more expensive to maintain. And that lack of armor piercing can give you a lot of problems in terms of scalability, especially when you're dealing with the heavily armored units of the Warriors of Chaos. So quite a few issues. It says a lot about Kislev that some of their best units, like the Warbears or the Tsar Guard, are actually dedicated units and not the hybrid nonsense that we have with the Hussars and Armored Hussars, or even the Ice Guard. The Ice Guard just aren't really that great units either, though if you're playing Catron, you do want to get the Doomstat because it is cheap to do so. So yeah, a good number of issues when it comes down to it. See, the biggest problem, however, is all of these issues would make them a weak race, weak faction, but then it's compounded by the fact that they do start in one of the worst regions with a lot of legendary lords. There's 7, 8 even potential threats to deal with. I mean, in this campaign, I'm dealing with the World Walkers. I had to deal with Frot, then Trog, that's 3, Azak 4, Dryka 5, Malice, Darkblade 6, yes, he did declare war on me. And really, I need to deal with Archeon as well, so that's 7, and even the Demon Prince to win the campaign. And those are just some of the possibilities. There's actually more. Like, even a stronger faction could struggle dealing with this many challenges, but Kislev is not a strong faction. It's not a strong race. And yet they get thrown in the deep end from the very beginning. Can you make it work? Yeah, you can play as any race, any faction in the game and make it work. That doesn't mean they're in a good position. One of the problems, by the way, another one of the issues, is that when we're thinking about a tier 1 settlement, the only 2 units you can get from barracks are either Hussars with Spears, which are okay, they're decent anti-large, can help out, or Kosovoite Dervishes, which are some of the worst units you can recruit in the entire campaign, because they're incredibly weak, low armor, weak melee stats. Yes, they're fast, true, but they're incredibly fast, but that speed is not going to matter, especially given the fact that the vast majority of battles, as I have stated, are either minor settlement battles or siege battles, and Kislev doesn't necessarily have the units to be very effective in that. Sure, you can cheese in minor settlement battles by parking all your archers just outside of the settlement, but that only works as long as the AI allows it to work, and as long as you're dealing with settlement types where you can take advantage of your range power. It can be a problem against Skaven. It can be a problem against Warriors of Chaos trying to assault their settlements. Minor settlements or walled settlements can be quite a bit of an issue when you are dealing with all of those problems. They really need more additions to their unit rosters. They need a better economy. They may even need a control benefit outside of Catherine. Catherine has no control issues whatsoever, and they do need a better handling when it comes to the devotion. That's what I think. Costin here signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, enable notifications, and I'll see you next time.